Good morning / close to afternoon, everyone. This is Charles with the Exodus Logistics Learning Center, Dispatcher 101 Training for Beginners. Just doing a live video here, starting to make my presence a little bit more felt inside of the live YouTube channel for our subscribers with some free content. Today we're going to do some Q&A, so come on in if you can. We're going to do some Q&A, and the topic of the Q&A is, what are some misconceptions? What are some freight broker, well, not freight broker, but what are some freight dispatcher misconceptions? What are some misconceptions about the freight dispatcher? Right? So I am going to entertain some questions regarding misconceptions about freight dispatchers. Okay. So if you have any questions or concerns, now would be the time to come in and ask those questions and concerns about misconceptions about freight dispatchers. Wanda Clarity. Hey, Aunt Wanda. Good morning, nephew. Hey, Auntie. How are you? My aunt that's in here. How you doing, Aunt Wanda? There's 7 in here so far. Click the thumbs up for if you like the channel, if you like the questions. So the questions is, I'll repeat, I'll circle back. I'll put some links in the beginning of this video too, to go to the website on the dispatcher side. But the questions are Dispatcher 101 Q&A. What are some misconceptions about freight dispatchers? Like, do you need an authority? What is this? What is that? If you are entertaining being a dispatcher, what are some of the requirements? What do you have to know? What are some things you may not need to know? Things of that nature. So any questions, now will be the time to get those questions answered. I am entertaining that. So you are welcome, Aunt Wanda. Okay. So I put out 3 videos, or shorts, I should say, about 5 minutes or less videos about a few misconceptions of dispatching. One of which, can you make money in it? Another of which, is it easy to do or is it difficult? Hello, Nicole Greer. And then the third one is, do you have to have what's called an authority to be a dispatcher? So those are some misconceptions that I answered in the shorts videos that we did on the YouTube channel, and I made those public, posted those a few days ago, got some pretty good feedback. So now I'm here again to answer any other questions that you guys may have, because you guys have subscribed to the YouTube channel because you are showing interest in the transportation industry as either a freight dispatcher, trucking company, freight broker, things of that nature. This channel here is the freight dispatcher channel, Dispatcher 101 Training for Beginners. So if you're interested in that channel, there you go. We also are introducing our in-person live weekend trainings, Saturdays and Sundays, on the dispatcher side, as well as the freight broker side. We have a logistics learning center that is in the Western Branch area of Chesapeake. For those of you who are from the Hampton Roads area, you are familiar with that area, 3101 American Legion Road, Suite 21A, Chesapeake, Virginia, 23321. That is our location. This Tuesday, we're going to be shooting some footage to brand and market and promote and drive traffic to the Learning Center for in-person weekend trainings. Dispatcher trainings will be Saturdays and Sundays from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then the freight broker side will be Saturdays and Sundays from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So if you are not local, you still can. Where are you from, Nicole? If you're not local, you can take our online training, our online in-person training, ongoing training. I've put several links when we first started here in this chat area so that you can refer to the different links on the website to decide. So, Cleveland, Ohio. Used to live in Ohio. They used to call Cleveland back in the day the mistake by the lake. So hopefully you're not over that area. Maybe you're off St. Clair, maybe 116th Street or whatever. But yeah, Cleveland, Ohio, suburb of Cleveland, Shaker Heights, Upper Sandusky, Cedar Point, I think is up there, that theme park. So um, what brings you to the channel? Do you have an interest in um, transportation? Or do you have an interest in being a dispatcher, a freight dispatcher? Do you have an interest in working from home, being your own boss, making money in the transportation without a truck or a CDL? You don't need any of those things to make money in transportation. You can make money in transportation without a truck or CDL by being a freight dispatcher or being a freight broker. She says, I saw you on Truck and Hustle and would love to learn. Okay. So on Truck and Hustle, we were talking mostly about dispatching, but we also mentioned a few glimpses about freight brokering. So which discipline do you have an interest in? Is it the freight dispatching side, or is it the freight brokering side and do you understand the difference between the two? That's the next question. So you would like to learn both. Okay, great. If that's the case, for not only you, but for anyone else, if you want to know both, then I would suggest starting with freight dispatching, because that's the easiest and it has the lowest barrier to entry. So that's the easiest entry point into transportation from a dispatching point of view. And then you would transition over time, let's say a year or so, to the freight broker side. So the dispatchers do not need to have what's called an authority, an operating authority. The freight brokers do. Dispatchers do not need to have a broker license or of that nature. Freight brokers do. So that's just my recommendation. You'll find your transition easier if you come in as a dispatcher first. All you need is a business license, a business name, an EIN attached to your license, and your registered name, and you are established as a business. Let's say Greer's Dispatching or Greer's Logistics, whatever you want to call yourself. And then you would need to get a truck driver, and we show several ways on how to do that. Get a truck driver, a motor carrier, an owner operator to agree for you to dispatch for them. In other words, load their trailer full of freight and keep them running back and forth, and you make money for doing that. That is what dispatchers do. They dispatch. The word dispatch literally means to send off, to send off. So in the transportation world, dispatching is you're sending off trucks to pick up loads from shippers, transport them safely and securely to receivers for delivery, and you are paid for that service. Other dispatchers like 911 dispatchers, police dispatchers, fire dispatchers, they send off their equipment people to those particular accidents or emergencies and things like that. So, okay, so understanding the different types of trucks to target, we go over that from a basics perspective. We tell you the specific semis to go after to make your job as a new dispatcher easiest. And we tell you the equipment types to kind of avoid starting out. Okay. So we go over that. That's the easiest entry point. We go over load boards, the software that's used to show you how to navigate according to your driver's requirements and find loads according to their profile in order for you to make money, because you want to listen to your driver tell you, I only want to haul so much weight on my trailer, things of that nature. Freightliner is the best from what I hear. As far as the trucks, the Freightliner Cascadia, the DD13s, the DD15s, you got Kenworths, you got Peterbilts, Kenworths, Volvos, Mack trucks. So I'm not sure if the Freightliner is the best as far as repairs, parts, or things of that nature, or this is just from what you're hearing, because there are several other styles of trucks, right? But the drivers that you want to target are the ones who drive either the 53-foot dry van truck and trailers, the 53-foot refrigerated or reefer truck and trailers, or the 48 or 53-foot flatbed truck and trailers. Now, those trucks and trailers, the trucks can be Freightliner, Mack, Volvo, Kenworth, Peterbilt, Internationals. So there's different ones. So depending on your driver, what they have, and that piece is not really an important piece for the dispatcher. When you get a truck driver who's wants you to be their dispatcher, they already have their equipment type. Whether it is a Freightliner Cascadia 2014 with 500,000 miles, DD15, Detroit engine, Allison transmission, you don't know that, right? But once you get them under your dispatching contract or dispatcher agreement, then those things will come out. So because you're going to need some of that data, you're not going to need all that down to the T, but you're going to need some data from them in order for you to find loads for them on that software we just mentioned called a load board. And you're looking up loads according to what was posted by the freight brokers so that you can find loads for your carrier with whom you're dispatching for, and then negotiate the rates with the brokers to make your money, right? Either your percentage per the load or your flat fee for the week as an independent freight dispatcher. You're not a dispatcher under a trucking company, but you are independent. This is your business. So you are working from home and you are free, right? You don't work for an employer. You are your own boss. You're independent, right? So you set your own schedule. You set your own processes as how to run your dispatching service or your dispatching company. Can you do this while still working a 9 to 5? You can, but it will be challenging. If your 9 to 5 is from 11 p.m. at night, if you work a third shift, it'll be a little bit easier because third shift is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So during the daytime, once you get home and get a few hours rest, you can wake up and start getting carriers, start dispatching for them. The reason why, if you're working a regular 9 to 5 during 9 to 5, the hours, those are the same hours that the brokers are posting the loads and trying to sell those loads to carriers, either themselves or through their dispatchers. So as a dispatcher, it would be ideal to keep pace with the hours of the brokers, which is the 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 7:30 to 3, or whatever those hours are. So if you have a second job, unless you got someone you trust, like a spouse, boyfriend, business partner, who can do the dispatching side for you and partner with you while you are doing your 9 to 5 until you get to a point where your income from your dispatching kind of matches or exceeds your 9 to 5. Then you can decide if you want to come on over to the full-time dispatching. But to answer your question, it's possible, but it's challenging to if you have a 9 to 5 and you are trying to have a independent dispatching service. So that is a challenge. So working from home and things like that. All you need to start is a computer, like a desktop or a laptop, internet service, and a cell phone or a landline system, right? And some formal training to get started, things of that nature. Great question. Needed to know that. Okay, I work in an office by myself. I think I can do it. So if you are in the office and you have the ability and you work by yourself and you have the ability to access the computer for things that are not work related, like you can go on the internet and look at load boards and do other things while you are performing your job. If your employer allows something like that, then that possibility increases. It becomes more possible because you are working in an environment that has some flexibility for you. So there you go. You probably can do it a little. It's more possible. Okay, so it's less of a challenge there. Okay, so Miss V, great question. Need to know that. Which I'm assuming the question that was asked about, can you do this while working a 9 to 5? So, okay. So questions, any more questions? So the topic of today's live was the misconceptions of being a freight dispatcher? What are some of the misconceptions? What are some of the things or the myths or misconceptions that people may be hearing that we can kind of discuss and kind of dispel those things, and we can kind of break it down from a basic perspective. Nicole said, I can bring my laptop. I'm the manager. Okay, well, see, now your flexibility is beginning to grow. You are even more flexible. So it seems like you can do it now. Work your 9 to 5 and build your carrier base or your carriers that you're going to be dispatching for, creating your dispatcher packet, which contains the 3 documents: dispatcher agreement, limited power of attorney, and the carrier profile. And then we have templates in our portal as ongoing members that we share and allow you to edit to your company's types specifications. So yes, while working a 9 to 5, also supplies needed to get to start dispatching. Yes, the basic level supplies will be the physical supplies, the hardware, the cell phone or landline, laptop or desktop, and the internet service, high speed internet. Now if you want to get more detail than that, we can go into the specs of the cell phone, landline. We can go into the specs of the computer, desktop, laptop. We can go into the specs of the internet service, high speed, how much up speeds and down speeds, uploads and downloads. But those are the basic requirements. And you're gonna need some software too. You're probably gonna need a spreadsheet, maybe Microsoft Office that contains a spreadsheet, a load board eventually, because you're going to be, in most cases, new freight dispatchers are going to be typically using the load boards to find what's called spot market loads or spot market freight in order to get started as a dispatcher. Eventually, at some point over time, you're going to be building relationships with the freight brokers, and then you'll just go back and forth with them, utilizing their lanes and their loads over and over again once you've established that first contact with them. So, okay. Next, any other questions? Misconceptions. What are some misconceptions? What do you guys think are some misconceptions in freight dispatching? Or what have you been hearing for those of you who are entertaining coming into the industry as a freight dispatcher in transportation? What are some things that you may have heard that may have swayed you away from coming in? Things of that nature. Said, thank you. Can you use Google Docs as well as your spreadsheet? Of course you can. Yeah, Google Docs has a spreadsheet feature and it's online, and you can give certain permissions like share permissions and access permission to people who can access Google Docs as well, and send them your link to your specific Google Docs with the permission to share it. So yes, as long as you understand the software that you're going to be using for your business, you need to understand how to use it, right? So Nicole Greer said many OOs, owner operators, that's what OO means, guys, for those of you who don't know. Many owner operators say they can do it themselves, and why do they need a dispatcher? That is a great question. That is true. Why would they need a dispatcher? Well, the number one reason is time. So if I'm an owner operator, which I used to drive trucks, I'm an owner operator, and I'm too busy driving, right? I'm under a load in my trailer, in my truck and trailer, my equipment, while I'm on the way to deliver this load to a receiver facility, a consignee. I don't have time to find my next load because I'm too busy concentrating on driving and making sure that this freight is being delivered safely and securely. So by the time I get to the facility and sitting there for a couple of hours to be offloaded, I could be on my phone on some app looking for something else. But if I had a dispatcher doing that the moment I picked up this load, so by the time I get to that delivery, my next load is either waiting for me some 50 to 100 miles away or somewhere else, right? So the dispatcher helps the drivers, the owner operators kind of streamline the process of finding their next load and their next load and their next load, right? Just keeping that process going and generating revenue for them, grossing the monies for them for the week or however long that they are running. So dispatchers help with administrative tasks like such as invoicing, processing the onboarding process with the freight brokers, albeit with the broker carrier agreements and the rate confirmations. So these things, if you have someone in the background doing that in an office setting who has a fax machine that can upload things and download things quicker because you're on the road as an owner operator, would that not be an ideal setting to be in as an owner operator, a truck driver? So, okay. So it's a time factor, it's an efficiency factor. So a lot of things, if you can streamline your processes, then you can create a system for yourself that at some point will become more automated over time if you have a dispatcher as an owner operator, right? And some owner operators think they know their business. You'd be surprised how many of them don't. They don't know their bottom line. They don't know them. They don't understand their fuel expenses. They don't understand their cost of doing business as far as all the expenses they have to run their company. If they're leasing their trailers and trucks, fuel, insurance, maintenance, preventative things. So when you're talking to these owner operators, they think they know everything, but once you get into the nuts and bolts of their company, you'll see that they're losing money because their overhead is very high. So, and as a dispatcher, the more that you can educate the owner operator on those things, the more marketable you become as a dispatcher for them. Like for example, fuel costs. Most owner operators don't know their bottom line. They don't know their cents per mile to break even or their profit margin cents per mile. So these are things that we briefly discuss and get you acclimated to as a dispatcher so that you can kind of educate the owner operator in a way to motivate them and to market yourself as a good dispatcher in order to provide that service. So dispatchers are becoming extinct as told by a few people I've spoken with. Really? I'm curious to know who made that statement to you. Because, in my understanding, the market is saturated with dispatchers. Now, you use the word extinct. Now, the type of dispatchers that are becoming extinct are the ones who don't have a clue of how to dispatch. So that statement can be true in that regard. There are dispatchers, hey LaDonna, there are dispatchers who are becoming extinct who are ignorant of route planning, trip planning, running their carriers into and out of areas that they can get them freight and not sending them into and out of areas where they'll be stuck for a few days and they can't find them a load. These are the dispatchers that are becoming extinct because the carriers, the truck drivers, the owner operators are becoming aware that these are the ones who don't know what they're doing. Why did you send me with my dry van to Boise, Idaho, or Helena, Montana, and I got to sit there for 2 or 3 days, or I got to drive empty some 400 miles in whatever direction to my nearest pickup? And I'm burning fuel while I'm doing that. So my expense for fuel is increasing, right? But if you were a smarter person, dispatcher, you would have known that going to Boise or Helena, Montana with a dry van, even though that line haul that's going there paid pretty well, you still have to find something coming out in order to keep me running. So these are strategies and tips that we want to make sure that dispatchers understand. We show you resources that we have in our portal that you can see where there is a for each, and they're grouped by states or zones, parts of the country, right? Where it shows a high frequency of inbound as well as outbound movement of goods that can be loaded on trailers, depending on the trailer type, drive-in, flatbed, or reefer, so that you can educate yourself more efficiently on where to send your carriers into and out of as a dispatcher to make yourself more effective and efficient and provide the best service for your guys. Okay. Brother and sister-in-law, listening to your answer, that's exactly what they've said. Took a chance on a few that say they've been dispatching for years. Okay. Well, see, once you do dispatching over time and over the years, you're going to discover, you're going to notice patterns. There's certain areas of the country for a specific equipment type that you can find loads going into and out of. Like, for example, the Midwestern states, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Kentucky, right? Dry van, flatbed, or reefer. Inbound and outbound freight all day. Midwest, because that's the zone. The Midwest zone. A zone contains a number of states. So all those states that I just mentioned were in the Midwest zone. Okay. Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, right? Midwest zone. Three major equipment types: dry van, flatbed, reefer. You can find freight all day inbound and outbound. That's the number one zone of the 5 zones in this country that has a high volume of inbound and outbound freight. So as a dispatcher, you first hear that, and you know that now. You discover, you say, okay, well, wouldn't it be wise to keep my carriers running in those areas if that's the case? The second zone is the Southeast zone, which contains states like Virginia, North and South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Let's see what's this next state over, Alabama, things of that nature. So that's the number 2 zone, the Southeast. And then the third zone, the Southwest zone, and the major state over there is Texas because it's the biggest state in the union. So if you know that, then I would concentrate dry van, flatbed, and reefer, keeping my drivers running in those into and out of those different zones, the top 3 of the 5, right? Somewhere in the Midwest, down to the Southeast, over to the Texas, back over to the Midwest, back and forth, like in a triangular route plan type of thing, and keep them running weekly. As you do that over time, you are establishing relationships with the same brokers in the same lanes. So now you're building trust if your carriers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which leads to you being able to negotiate higher rates for your carriers because they're running those loads consistently. So the Midwest zone, the states in the Midwestern zone are the Midwestern states: Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. So all those Midwestern states. Okay. And there are resources out here that you can use to look at that as well. So any other questions? Q&A about the topic is what are some freight dispatcher misconceptions? What are misconceptions or myths about being a freight dispatcher? That's what we are entertaining today. Answering those questions while we are on here. We've been here all 27 minutes. So anything else you may have heard that you just kind of made you wonder, like, well, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but let me research that a little bit more to find out. It could be a misconception. It could be a myth. So ask away and we'll see if we can answer it for you. Okay. All right. So no more questions. So as there aren't any more questions, everyone has a thumbs up. We have 8 in here. Thumbs up. One of the 3 misconceptions we had in here was as a dispatcher, you need an authority. The second one is dispatching is hard. And the third one is dispatchers it doesn't pay to be a dispatcher. They don't make enough money, right? All 3 are misconceptions. So if you go back to the YouTube channel, you'll see those shorts that I did, those 5-minute or less, 6-minute or less videos about that, right? So I'm circling back a little bit. The first one was you need an operating authority to be a freight dispatcher. That is a misconception. You do not need an operating authority to be a freight dispatcher. You need an operating authority to be a motor carrier, truck driver, owner, operator, or a freight broker. Okay. So the broker is someone who arranges for the transportation of the freight. They procure it or get it from the shippers, and then they sell or broker for a fee to the motor carriers. So that's what the broker are. They're the middleman between the shippers, the customers, and the motor carriers, right? Those individuals, the freight broker, have to have a broker license or a broker authority in order to be able to do that. In order to be able to arrange for the transportation of freight, they have to have a license or an operating authority governed by the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, that issues the active authorities to the brokers. They have to have, and the authority is called a broker license. The motor carrier's authority is called a certificate. So brokers have licenses, carriers have certificates. If you see their paperwork, it'll say it on the paperwork. Broker authority, broker license, carrier authority, carrier certificate. Okay. But both parties have to have an operating authority. So a broker is someone who arranges for transportation of the freight. The motor carrier is someone who has been authorized to transport the freight. They have been given legal authorization to pick up freight legally and transport it for a fee to a facility for delivery, and they are paid for that. That's what motor carriers are. Both cases, motor carrier and freight broker, they have to have had applied for the operating authority by going to the FMCSA's website and registering for an authority, filling out the application form. It's called the Form OP-1, and they pay the one-time $300 non-refundable fee and applied for that authority. Now, the authority does not become active in both cases with the carrier and the broker until some other things have been submitted to the FMCSA for approval before the brokers got their authority active and before the motor carriers got their authority active. Now, all of that I'm talking about brokers and motor carriers. None of that applies to a freight dispatchers. Nowhere on the OP1, the form OP1 from the FMCSA website, it literally says application for broker and motor carrier authority. Nowhere does it say dispatcher. Again, dispatchers do not need to have an operating authority. If you are a dispatching service and you went to the FMCSA's website and registered and applied for an operating authority, you are no longer a dispatcher because you are applying either as a motor carrier or a freight broker. Okay, so let's dispel that myth or that misconception right here, right now, right? Dispatchers, all you need is a registered business name and a structure of that business, whether it's an LLC, limited liability company, and then an EIN attached to that to make all of that official. And then you need to have your training if you don't have any experience, your equipment, laptop, desktop, internet service, phone or landline, and then some extra software. And so your overhead is pretty low, right? With the brokers, you need a bond, you need all these other requirements. You need a bond, you need a process server or process agent, you need a UCR. With a motor carrier, you need a process agent, you need insurance, you need a UCR. Some brokers need insurance too. They can require insurance, but the bond is the insurance for the broker, and then the regular insurance is the insurance for the motor carrier. So both of them need UCRs. Both of them needs BOC3s, which is a form for the designation of a process person, process server, process agent, someone who can deal with any claims that are filed against them, who can, if paperwork is served, they'll be able to have an agent represent them, right? So these are the requirements. These are the pre-requirements before the authorities for the broker and the motor carrier become active, right? So, but again, none of that applies to the freight dispatcher. So if someone tells you, you're a dispatching service, do you have an authority? You say, no, I don't need one. I don't need an authority to be an independent freight dispatcher at all, right? So if you go to the website again, the fmcsa.dot.gov/registration, and you click apply for DOT and or operating authority, you click that, it's going to take you to the URS system, the Unified Registration System, if you are going there for the very first time. And it has two images, like cartoon images. One says new applicant, and the other one says returning applicant. So if you filled it out before and you had to step away, you would click the returning one. But if you're brand new applying for an authority, you click the new applicant, and then you go through the steps and stages of filling out the OP-1 form online. Okay, so again, it doesn't apply to the dispatcher. You do not need an operating authority as a freight dispatcher. You do as a motor carrier, you do as a freight broker. Okay, hopefully that cleared up some things a little bit. I know people have been hearing, and that's a misconception. So that's that on that one, right? Another misconception is it's hard to dispatch, right? It's hard to dispatch. And then another one is dispatchers don't make money, right? So are there any other misconceptions that you guys may have heard about freight dispatchers, just freight dispatchers, not about the brokers and the motor carriers. We're trying to cover some misconceptions about the freight broker in this Q&A. Just want to make sure we cover some things, get some things answered. Because if there's not any more questions, I can go ahead and end this Q&A live if you guys don't have any other questions that's kind of surrounding freight dispatching and what your take may be on it. Because you guys are subscribed to this channel, so I'm assuming you have some interest in this particular space, independent freight dispatching. So I'm just looking at the chat, see if there's any questions. No questions? Vincent Smith says, I'm interested in making the transition from driver to dispatcher. So let me ask you a question, Vincent, if you don't mind. Are you an owner operator or are you a company driver? Do you drive under someone's as a company driver, W-2 employee, or 1099 independent contractor? You're a company driver. Okay. What equipment do you drive? Do you drive a power unit with a drive-in trailer? What type of trailer do you have for your power unit if you have it? You're a cement mixer. Okay. Okay, interesting. Now you want to be an independent freight dispatcher. You want to work from home, be your own boss, make money in the transportation industry without a truck or a CDL, right? And that's possible. You can, I would say, continue cement driving because that's covering your, I'm assuming that's covering your bills, your expenses to live, right? While you are building your dispatching business and building your possible clientele with drivers who want you to dispatch for them. How much knowledge of the industry, Vincent, do you have currently about transportation? Is it just from the driver's perspective? You don't have anything about dispatching or brokering or anything else? How much experience or knowledge do you have in transportation? Okay, he says, be my own boss and make money outside of working for someone else. Yes, that's the idea. You want to get off the proverbial plantation, death to the 9 to 5, and be your own boss. Control your own destiny as opposed to someone else controlling it for you. That's what being an entrepreneur is. You control your own destiny. So if you don't kill your own food, you don't eat. You know, you got to hunt, kill your own food, and it's like a hunter, right? You're independent. What you say goes. What you do determines your business's success or failure. So you have to grind. So it's hard to be an entrepreneur. It's easy to be an employee because you are working for someone else. You're guaranteed 40 hours a week and you got a check coming. As an entrepreneur, you have to come up with ideas and think about things. So and creative ideas and do things to drive traffic and content to your industry, to your company, right? Bring on clients. Those things takes ideas, takes thinking. So living with Adiswa, thank you for your videos. I'm ready to become my own boss. Just got my LLC set up. Great. So living with, you want to become your own boss in what industry? Do you want to be, well, in transportation because you're on this channel, but dispatching or freight brokering? Living with Andiswa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Dispatcher. You want to be a dispatcher. Okay, so you've set up your LLC. You already I'm ready to come on, but just got my LLC set up. So what's the name of your dispatching business, your LLC, your limited liability company? What's the name of it? What's the name of your dispatching company? Good. And then once you tell us the name of your company, are you seeking to get some formal training from someone? Are you doing research with different training providers who provide dispatch training to see who offers the services that you are looking for? It may not be us. It may be, and I'm perfectly fine with that because I just want what's best for you. It's your company, so you need to determine what your requirements are from a trainer for your company, and then you research and do due diligence with the different ones who claim to be training providers in the industry, and then you decide which one can meet the expectations or the requirements that you have. So, people saying that they can't hear me, type a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, because my volume is up. My volume is at 70. Can you type a 1 in the chat if you can hear me? My volume is up. Okay, now I can hear you. It was choppy. Okay. So I was speaking to Living with Andiswa. She never told us the name, or they never told, I don't know if it's a male or female, Living with Andiswa. So what is the name of your dispatching LLC that you set up? So I wanna show you something or see something real quick. So once you answer that question, we'll go from there. Because your name is important in your business. That's the point I wanted to make. Once you decide to type in the name of your dispatch LLC, Living with Andiswa. Okay, Prosperous Dispatch Service. Okay, and the other one is called, mine is Sunset Drive Distribution. Okay, so here's the point I wanted to make with the name. If you are, and the one that has Prosperous Dispatch Services, if you are only going to be doing dispatching, right? And you're not going to scale your dispatching service to something like trucking, start a trucking company, or transition into freight brokering, then having the name dispatch or dispatch services is perfectly fine, right? If you do plan to scale your business into something other than dispatching, you start off dispatching, but then you say, hey, I want to buy a couple of trucks and do a trucking company as well, dispatch my own trucks as well as dispatch other owner operators. Or, hey, I want to start a freight brokerage as well and see what that looks like. If you plan on doing that, then having the name dispatch in your name, your business name, probably needs to change because now you're more broad now. You're trucking, you're freight brokering. So a name that has something like logistics in it will encompass everything. Logistics is dispatching, logistics is trucking, and logistics is freight brokering. So it's all under that one umbrella in that name. So for example, Prosperous Logistics or Logistical Services, right? And then you can have DBA under that, doing business. So Prosperous Logistics or Logistical Services, DBA, or doing business as Prosperous Dispatch Services, or Prosperous Logistical Services, doing business as Prosperous Transportation or Prosperous Trucking, and then Prosperous Logistics, doing business as Prosperous Freight Brokerage, all under one EIN, one entity, or separate. So, okay, have them all separate. Have a dispatching EIN, have a trucking EIN, and have a freight brokerage EIN. That's important for the name because you don't want to get too established way downstream and decide you have to change the name because now your name has been outgrown by your scaling or your scalability for your business. You have grown and scaled your business into other things other than dispatching, but your name just says dispatching. But you've expanded into trucking, into freight brokering. So I just want to let you guys know, be careful, with your name because you want to say, well, do I project in the next few years, not only dispatching, but to have a trucking company or have a freight brokerage? And then you go from there. Okay. So, but good information. So, all right. Any other questions or what we think is misconceptions in freight dispatching that we want to consider? Okay, very good. Very good, living with Andeswa. So, what are other misconceptions before we get off? I want to make sure that or any other, let's do any other general questions that we may have. Because I'm not thinking people having any misconception type of questions. But any other questions about freight dispatching that you want to entertain and ask me? Perfectly fine. Right? No? All right. Going once, going twice. Right? Want to make sure that before we get off here, that we get the questions answered. Do you offer a payment plan? Unfortunately, we do not. We used to, Nicole, but we got tired of, I got tired of chasing money. If I'm giving you an opportunity to make a payment plan, I would assume that you would pay at least the payment plans on time. So, but it just didn't happen that way. Right now, our from now until June 1st, which is 3 days from now, what, 28, 29, 30, 31st, 4 days from now, we're having half off. We're having 50% off of um, our dispatching online ongoing course is $5.99, the regular price, but half of that is $2.99. So 50% off of that. So 50% of $5.99 is $2.99. That's what we're having right now until June 1st. That sale ends on June 1st. And I'm putting the link up here again so you can go to the direct page to actually take a look at that with the promo code to join the ongoing training. Okay. And then also, if you're local to the 757-804 Hampton Roads area, maybe some Richmond area within a certain vicinity, we are starting to have in June, either in June or July, we're going to have 2-day weekend trainings that are also cheaper, but they're only 2 days, right? Saturday and Sundays from 3 to 5 on the dispatching side, 6 to 8 on the freight broker side. Dispatcher side, the weekend live trainings, live in person. I think they're $199 for the dispatcher side and $299 for the freight broker side. So, and you get 2 days training, you get quizzes, you get a certificate at the end of it. The ongoing training is better because you have access to a lot more tools. All right, Vaughn Bryant, Mr. Bryant, greetings, peace, and blessings. I finally caught a live, I'm assuming, but I came in at the end. I have a few questions. Okay, sir, what are your questions? Shoot. What are your questions, Mr. Bryant? And peace back to you. Peace and blessings. Let's see what you got. What do you got? You're probably typing right now. You probably got a lot of questions because it seems like you're typing. Do you find that you run across any scammers while dispatching? Of course. And there are a lot of them, right? So scammers being people who are trying to set you up for double brokering, scammers being people who say that they can train you and purchase their course and you'll get this, this, and this. So what type of scammers are you talking about? You just saying in general or in a specific area? But the general answer to that question is yes. There are plenty of scammers who are on the internet posing as people who instruct or posing as people who can give you loads for your drivers, like brokers, posing as trucking companies, posing as anything. So you just got to do your research, do your diligence, and then make your decision, right? So if you call me, I pick the phone up. and I put my number there. So you're speaking about booking loads. Yes, what would be a detector to let you know that this is taking place? So if you have someone, if you call someone for your carrier to book a load, if you are a dispatcher and you call someone for your carrier to book a load, but they are also a trucking company, trucking side, then run. Or when you are booking a load from a load on the load board, check the MC number of that broker or that supposed broker to see, and you can check it against a. So the FMCSA has a they have a website. They're the governing body in the transportation industry as it relates to safety and accountability and compliance. They have a feature on their website called a company snapshot. What they do is they give you data about a specific company based off of their DOT number, their MC number, or the name of the company. The feature on the website is called SAFER, SAFER. It stands for Safety and Fitness Electronic Record. You can check the DOT, MC, or name of a broker, shipper, motor carrier. Enter their MC, cross-reference it, and you'll get a host of data that you can vet and determine if this person is authentic or not. Okay, so let me put that link, the SAFER link, up here for you to take you directly to that portal so that you can see it. There's the link right there, company snapshot. Okay, so that can be a detector. That's one form of a detector, checking their credentials to see if their credentials are authentic and active. Right? If that's a red flag, then I would not proceed any further from that. Okay. What's your other question or questions? Very good question, by the way, Mr. Bryant. Was that it? Only two? You said you came in on the tail end of the live, and you have some questions. How liable are dispatchers if a load gets damaged? Not at all. Dispatchers are not liable at all for damaged freight. You know why? Because dispatchers did not take possession. So here's several reasons. Let's start with the beginning. When you create and form a dispatcher agreement, the verb between you and that motor carrier, the verbiage in the dispatcher agreement should have some phrases like dispatcher will be held harmless in any and all claims from damaged goods and things like that. Why? Because dispatchers are not there when the freight is picked up. The motor carrier drives their truck and trailer to the shipper, and once they get the BOL or the bill of lading from the shipping facility after the trailer is loaded, the shipper is releasing possession and responsibility of that freight to the motor carrier through that document called the BOL, the bill of lading. Lading means freight cargo, so the bill of cargo, which is the manifest of what's being loaded on that trailer. Pallet count, weight, commodity, whatever, any special requirements. Once the shipper signs it and timestamps, dates it, and the carrier who's transporting that signs it in the same area of the shipper's location on that BOL paperwork, the carrier now has assumed responsibility for the freight. They've taken possession of it while it's on their trailer, shut and secured and being transported safely to the receiver, right? It is in the carrier's possession, the truck driver's possession. Nowhere in that process is the dispatcher. You're at home looking for their next load, right? So now once the carrier gets to the receiver facility, they picked it up from the shipper or the consignor, and they transported it to the receiver or the consignee for delivery. Once the receiver breaks the seal on the trailer, opens the truck up, offloads the freight, the cargo into their warehouse, and verify and check everything to see if everything's good or damaged or not. In any case, they'll either sign it or sign certain parts of it saying this was damaged or reject the whole load. In all those cases, the receiver's now taking possession of the freight unless it's rejected and it's kept by the carrier, and now they got to deal with the broker. But in most cases, the receiver takes possession of the freight, and removes or indemnifies the broker and the carrier from responsibility because now it's off of the driver's trailer. The receiver has taken possession of it, and they've signed on the BOL as well in the receiver area that they've done so. We've taken it. This is ours now, timestamp and date, and the carrier verifies it, signing in that too. That's a clean BOL. That's a POD. That's proof of delivery now for the carrier. Nowhere in that process, whether damaged or otherwise, is there liability on the dispatcher. Nowhere. And you can back that up, dispatcher, when you first initially get into a contract or a dispatcher agreement between you and your carrier, owner, operator, truck driver, or truck drivers. You create your standard contract, and the wording in there should have some phrases in there that the dispatcher is removed from any responsibility of any and all claims. Because they should be, because you have nothing to do with the actual transporting, picking up, transporting, and delivering of the freight. You have nothing to do with that. That is the driver's world, right? That is their responsibility. Shipper giving it to the driver transporting it to the receiver receiving the goods. Nowhere in there is the dispatcher. Okay. Mr. Bryan said if a load has 3 drops, but after the second one is delivered, the driver has run out of hours of service. But still has another load to drop. How would you handle that situation? You, dispatcher, would not. The driver has to let the broker know, either through you by telling you to call the broker, or the drivers themselves call the broker and let them know. And that's number one. But number two, why would a driver put themselves in a position by accepting a load, knowing what the load required initially before they signed that rate confirmation? See, when you book loads for your drivers, you're going to get a rate confirmation saying what the requirements are, the number of stops, et cetera, right? So if I'm a driver and I know that I'm not going to have enough hours of service to make this 3-stop shipment, why in my right mind as a carrier would I take that chance? That's number one. But let's assume that the driver was green, didn't even know that. In this case, and he's caught up in this scenario, this shipment, right? So if a driver has 3 drops, but after the second one, so he's dropped off 2 and he only got 1 left, but he doesn't have enough hours of service. Right. It should have been determined before accepting the load, because drivers know their hours of service, how many hours they have. And if it's multiple shipments, you're taking more of a risk as a driver if you have multiple shipments, but you're limited on the hours of service you have left in your driving before you have to reset your hours. But let's say, for example, the driver got caught up in this scenario. They would call the broker and say, hey, I'm running out of hours of service. I need to shut down and do my reset. I can't move the truck anymore because of my hours, but I still have my 3rd delivery on this truck. Is it possible to get that delivery extended so that I can do my hours and still make the delivery? So now the broker is going to scramble and call the shipper, and who's going to call their customer, the receiver, to run that scenario by them. Broker's going to chew out the driver and say, okay, well, when we booked this load, you never told me that you had an issue with hours. I was under the impression when you signed that rate confirmation, you were straight on hours. Now you put me, the broker, in a precarious situation with my customer, the shipper, who's going to call their customer, the receiver, who's going to cuss them out for delaying their freight because this driver didn't have the common sense to determine whether they want to take this load or not with these multiple stops. So as a dispatcher, when you first book that load with the driver, that's why you give them the details of the load when it's posted on the load board by the broker. Hey, this load has 3 stops, multiple stops. So you call your driver and say, hey, this is Brian's dispatching services. I'm looking at this load that you may be interested in, but it has 3 stops. It has multiple stops. You think you're going to be able to do this one? You got the hours to do it? So even asking a broad question like that, hey, are you think you're going to be able to do that? That includes the fact that you have the hours, or you should have the hours to do it. You shouldn't have to ask your driver every time that you book a load for them, do you have the hours? But as a new dispatcher, get into the habit of doing that. Then over time, you and your driver build that relationship. That becomes an obvious question at that point. Hey, I got this next load for you. Think you can handle it? Thinking you can handle it means, do you have enough hours to do it? Are you empty? Do you agree with the rate? Do you want me to book the load? Things like that. But as a new dispatcher, ask them every single thing to make sure all your bases are covered, right? So the blame will never come back to you. That is on the driver, right? Because the driver should have had enough common sense to know, right? Now with that being understood, how would you negotiate that particular load if the hours of service? Well, you nor the driver have no room for negotiation in that scenario because the driver agreed to take that load with the hours of service they had, unbeknownst to the broker, and then got into a situation where they delivered the first two stops, but the third stop they couldn't deliver because they didn't have hours of service. That is not the broker's fault. That is the driver's fault. That's the driver's fault. Driver know, and even after you, the dispatcher, explained to them, hey, this load, and the broker posted it on the load board. This load has multiple stops. It has 3 stops. It's picking up in Norfolk, Virginia. There's a stop in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. There's a stop in Greenville, South Carolina, and then the final stop is in Atlanta. Okay, he did the Elizabeth City and the Greenville. By the time he got midway between Greenville and Atlanta, his hours of service ran out. He had to pull into a rest stop or a truck stop, shut his truck down, and reset his hours. You gotta let the broker know that because the broker is expecting on-time delivery of every shipment, of every stop on that shipment, on that one shipment with multiple stops, right? So, but the driver didn't realize. Either they realized it and ignored it, or they were totally green and didn't even understand. That gets back to the original statement I made a while ago. Some drivers don't know their own company. They don't know their expenses. They don't know their hours of service. They don't know anything, right? So as a dispatcher, you can kind of help your drivers. Some drivers ask, well, why do I need a dispatcher? Well, here's a perfect scenario why you would need a dispatcher, because a dispatcher wants to make sure that you're going to be able to cover this particular load by explaining to you, first of all, the details of the load in order for you, driver, to make a conscious decision to take this load. Because once the rate confirmation is signed, the driver is responsible for that load. So, in the process of applying for an LLC and EIN, should I start out by working for a company, or would it be better to just start as an independent dispatcher? Well, that's a great question. Some people say, well, I want to work for a company as a sub dispatcher under a company to kind of get the experience of dispatching freight, dispatching carriers. But you can do that by being your own independent dispatcher too. You're going to bump your head a little bit more, but you learn from those experiences. So it's a toss up. It's the choice is up to you, the individual, when you start your own business. It is your choice. Do you want to go out there on your own and learn from your mistakes? Which is also great. You learn from the mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes whether you work for a company or if you're independent, right? So the only thing with the company is you have kind of a safety net because you're working under their umbrella and under their system. As an independent, you're making the mistakes. You may lose money, or you may not get the carrier, or you may lose a load or whatever, but you experience it, right? And it's not that great of mistakes, right? It's just a learning curve there from working from a company as starting off as an independent dispatcher or working by yourself. Okay. So great questions though. Mr. Bryant, you came in on the tail end and knocking it out the park here. That's that one scenario with the driver was an excellent question though, because sometimes those things kind of happen. But in any case, none of that has anything to do with the dispatcher. If you do your job as a dispatcher, like when you're booking a load for your carrier and you see the description of the information on the load board, you give that information to your driver so that they can make a formal decision as to whether or not they want to take that load. Now, there may be cases where a posting on the load board does not have as much data posted by the broker about special instructions and what the load requires. It is there, you, the dispatcher, will question the broker, ask them certain questions. And in our training, we have what's called a load details cheat sheet, where there's particular standardized questions that we will have based off of all the loads that we booked over time with us and our students, some of the standard things that loads require. 4 particular equipment types. So we separated the cheat sheet. So if there's something missing on the posted of the load by that broker, you reference the cheat sheet and say, okay, well, they didn't ask this. Well, what's the weight of the load? What's the commodity? How many stops is it? What are any special instructions? What is your policy on accessorials? Or anything like that. These are things you, the dispatcher, over time, you're going to learn to ask the broker so that you can fill in the blanks. So when you share that with your carrier, they'll be more informed to decide if they want that load or not. And here's one thing, here's a no-no, a big no-no in dispatching. Never book a load with a freight broker without first talking to your driver, because you don't know if the driver is able to pick that load up. You don't know if they're empty or if they're under a load waiting to deliver. So that's a big no-no. You can look for loads and find loads all day, but you need to share the information with your carrier that you're dispatching for, that you're making money with, and let them decide, because that's who the ultimate decision rests with anyway, the driver. You're just providing them the data that they need in order to make the decision. Okay? So, but that's the art and the science, a little bit of it, of dispatching. And then once you do that stuff repetitively, it becomes second nature. Then you get into the trip planning and the route planning, which means where to send strategically the drivers to, into and out of, inbound and outbound on a regular basis. So now that your dispatching processes and workflows become a little bit more automated, right? And at the same time, you are building relationships with those freight brokers with whom you are booking loads for. So as long as your driver performs like they're supposed to do, OTP and OTD, on-time pickup and on-time delivery, that relationship with the broker is going to be great, because they're going to love your driver because he or she is doing a great job, which gives you leverage as a dispatcher to negotiate more money for the driver. Okay? Type a 1 in the chat if this information was okay for you, and or whether or not you've learned something today. Type a 1 in the chat, please. We've been on here an hour and 7 minutes. Very good. I think that's enough information for one day. What do you think? Or if not, if there are any more questions. Amala. Okay. Amala typed a bunch of ones. 11 million, 111,000, and 111. So ones. Very good. If there aren't any more questions for you guys, for me, from you guys, for me, we can get off here. This is live, so you can go back and watch it on the YouTube channel. It's going to be public to kind of give you some insight. Okay, so we started off with Q&A, and the topic was what are the misconceptions in freight dispatching. But then we covered some of those, and then we got into some Q&A and some good Q&A. So, are you on every Sunday? Please come back. So, I'm going to start showing my face more so. I'm busy. We actually have online training for students. I don't know if you are interested in enrolling in our course, but we have a website. We have online training. And if you're in our area where we live, we have in-person weekend trainings. But we have an online training with members. We have our own members portal where our members who are enrolled can come in, and we do live Zoom trainings 3 times a week, every second and fourth week of each month. But every now and then I will show my face on the YouTube channel to promote our trainings in order to motivate people to come aboard in our training. So every Sunday, I may do it in my off training weeks. I may show up multiple days. I'll just pop up. I'm getting into the process of showing my face more on the YouTube channel to kind of promote the dispatching as well as the freight broker side. I may do some freight broker calls later on tonight on live. But yes, but check us out online and tell us what you think. We have a private Facebook group for our members only as well. And reach out to us. I'm putting my phone number in here. And thank you, Farhan Professor. You dropping gems, sir. I'm dropping germs. Okay. I'm assuming you made gems. So and my email, my phone number, and the website for the training page. We have a private Facebook group. You guys are on the YouTube channel right now. I have close to 30,000 subscribers, which is not bad, right? If I were here more, I'd probably have more subscribers, but I want those subscribers to turn into enrolled members. That's my goal. So as not only dispatching, but freight brokering as well, and possible in-person trainings, weekends, if you are in our area, our Hampton Roads, Virginia area, 7 cities. So, okay. Salute to you guys. If there are not any more questions, I will bid you a fond farewell and have a safe and wonderful Memorial Day tomorrow with your families or whoever you're celebrating it with. And this will be uploaded pretty soon. All right. Good afternoon.